Vivid verses.
It was Friday, 6:45 p.m. I've been in transit for an hour, dealing with the usual gridlock on I-95. The mental load was high. I had a project deadline pending for the Q1 rollout, and my phone had been blowing up since noon regarding a supply chain bottleneck in the newer distribution center. We were looking at a 14% variance in shipping times if I didn't reroute the fleet by Monday. My brain was stuck in logistics mode, solving for X, mitigating Y. When I finally navigated the exit ramp and pulled into the driveway, the realization hit me: the dry cleaning. The tickets were sitting on the passenger seat, stark white against the black leather. The shop closed at 6 o'clock. I didn't panic. I ran the numbers immediately. The charcoal suit I needed for Monday was in there, but I had a backup navy worsted wool in the closet. The gray trousers needed pressing, but that wasn't critical for the weekend schedule. Logistically, this was a minor inconvenience, a variance of perhaps 3% in the weekend's operational efficiency. I could hit the shop at 7 a.m. Monday and still make the 8:30 stand-up meeting. It was a solvable problem. The problem wasn't the clothes. The problem was the context. We were supposed to lock in the Christmas decision tonight. My mother had emailed 3 times asking for the headcount. Tess's sister was holding off on booking flights until we confirmed we were hosting. The logistics of a Christmas party for 20 people are significant. Catering, liquor inventory, cleaning services, guest room prep, managing the dietary restrictions of 3 different households. It requires a 4-week lead time to execute without burning out. We were at the deadline. If we didn't greenlight the project tonight, the supply chain for the party would collapse. I walked inside. The house was quiet, but the temperature in the room felt distinct, the static pressure before a thunderstorm. The entryway was clear, shoes aligned, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was expectant. Tess was at the kitchen island, the command center of the house, looking at her laptop. Her posture was rigid, shoulders tight, head angled down. I put my keys in the ceramic bowl. The click sounded unnaturally loud. "I didn't get the cleaning," I said. I didn't offer a preamble. I didn't verify the traffic conditions or explain the call from the VP that held me up. Efficient communication means stating the failure up front so you can move to the solution. Excuses are just noise that degrades the signal. Tess looked up. She didn't blink. She closed the laptop deliberately, reducing the angle until the magnetic latch engaged. "I specifically asked you to go before 5 o'clock, she said. "I know. The afternoon got away from me. I'll handle it Monday." This was the inflection point. In a functional partnership, a venture where both parties are working toward a shared Q4 goal. The response is frustration, followed by a pivot to the immediate schedule. "Okay, it's annoying, but what about dinner?" You assess the damage, mitigate, and move forward. Instead, Tess went for the throat. She initiated the pattern I'd seen a dozen times before. This is a tactic where a current, low-stakes error is used to validate a historic, high-stakes grievance, thereby proving a pattern of behavior that justifies a total seizure of power. "This is just who you are, Isaac," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, it was tired. That resignation is dangerous. It implies a verdict has been reached, the jury dismissed. It's the exact same thing as that dinner 2 years ago. "You just leave me hanging while you do whatever you want." I stood by the fridge, keeping my hands at my sides. I didn't react externally. I needed to assess the battlefield. She was referencing the gala, the Starlight Foundation dinner 2 years ago. I was 40 minutes late because of a catastrophic site failure at one of our primary distribution nodes. A server rack overheated, triggering the suppression system, threatening $6 million in inventory. I couldn't leave. I had regulatory agencies and the fire marshal on the line. She had to stand alone at a cocktail hour for 40 minutes. It was unfortunate. It was optically bad. It was also 2 years ago. Since that night, I have attended 14 weddings, 6 funerals, and countless dinners on time. My on-time performance rating is easily in the 98th percentile. But she wasn't talking about the dry cleaning anymore. She was building a case for negligence. She didn't wait for a defense. She escalated to the veto. And honestly, she continued, standing up now, gaining momentum. This is exactly why we shouldn't host Christmas. I can't handle the stress of wondering if you'll actually be ready when guests arrive. I don't want to be standing at the door, making excuses for you again like I was that night. I just can't trust you. There it was. The leverage play. The logic was breathtakingly manipulative. If I argued about the dry cleaning, I looked petty and irresponsible. If I argued about the gala, I looked defensive and stuck in the past. If I begged for Christmas, I was auditioning for her approval, implicitly agreeing that my reliability was up for debate. She had tied a minor logistical error, the shirts, to a historic grievance, the gala, to strip me of my standing in the household, Christmas. She wanted me to apologize for my character in exchange for the privilege of hosting my family in a house I pay the mortgage on. I looked at her. I realized in that moment that the relationship was no longer a partnership. It was a series of transactions where I was paying compound interest on a debt I didn't owe. A partnership requires good faith. This was a hostile takeover of the narrative. I needed a firewall. I had to separate the issues, or I'd lose the war. I kept my voice flat. No anger. Anger is a loss of control. It's an admission that the other person has compromised your emotional perimeter. I needed to be the most rational person in the room. Tess, I said. I waited until she made eye contact. I held the gaze for 2 seconds, long enough to establish that I wasn't flinching. First of all, do not ever speak to me like that. I let that hang. It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary calibration. We don't do disrespect here. Second, we are talking about 3 different things. I held up a finger. The mistake. I forgot the dry cleaning. That is on me. I own that. I will pick it up Monday morning. It is a logistical error with a zero-cost solution. Get over it. I saw a flicker in her eyes. Confusion. She wasn't used to me categorizing her complaints like line items on a P&L sheet. Usually, I apologize to keep the peace. I offer a concession. That stopped today. The history. I continued, moving to the second finger. I'm not going to have a conversation about my character based on a dinner from 2 years ago, especially when you've made multiple mistakes in that period. I paused. I needed to be specific, but brief. The tax penalty notification you missed last April cost us $1,200. The dent in the rear bumper of the Audi that you didn't report for 3 weeks. I never talk about those. I buried those because I value the relationship more than being right. That ledger is closed. If you open mine, I open yours, and you won't like the math. She started to open her mouth, likely to dispute the comparison or claim her mistakes were accidents, while mine were choices. I didn't yield the floor. I drove the point home. The future, I said, cutting her off. As for Christmas, I have been on time to every event for the last 24 months. My track record is clean. Bringing up that dinner to veto hosting is a manipulation tactic. It's a reach. It's intellectually dishonest. I stepped closer to the island, placing my hands on the granite countertop. The stone was cold. I needed her to understand the gravity of the position. I will not audition for your trust, I told her. In fact, I'm getting a real picture of your character right now. I'm not liking it. The silence that followed was heavy. The refrigerator compressor hummed. The recessed lighting cast long shadows. This was the moment where usually the man backpedals. He softens the blow. He says, "Look, I'm sorry. I just want us to be happy." He negotiates against himself because he fears the conflict more than he values his dignity. I didn't do that. I initiated the withdrawal. If you don't want to host because of the work involved, that is fine, I said. It is a lot of work. We can go to your mother's, or we can stay here alone. That is a logistical decision. I can respect a logistical decision. I check my watch. 7:05 p.m. But if you are refusing to host to try and punish me for a 2-year-old mistake, then we simply won't host. I'm not playing that game. I pushed off the counter. I'm going to go make dinner now. Let me know what you decide. I walked past her. I didn't slam a door. I didn't storm off. I walked into the kitchen proper with the same energy I used to walk into a conference room after closing a deal. I opened the fridge and took out the flank steak I'd prepped yesterday. As I got the cast iron skillet out, I listened. The living room was silent. I had stripped the dinner incident of its power. If she wanted to cancel Christmas, she had to own that decision. She couldn't blame it on my unreliability because I had just dismantled that argument. She was left with a choice: hold on to the grudge and lose the party she actually wants, or drop the grudge and move forward. She can no longer have both. I salted the steak. Coarse sea salt. I watched the grains hit the red meat. The logic of the situation was clear to me now. This wasn't about Christmas. This was about a fundamental lack of respect. She was banking grievances to use as currency. That is a deficit model of a relationship. It's unsustainable. I turned on the gas burner. The flame caught with a whoosh, settling into a steady blue ring. While the pan heated up, I wasn't thinking about whether she would come in and apologize. I was thinking about the joint accounts. I was thinking about the equity in the house, currently estimated at about 35% of the market value. I was thinking about the lease on her car, which was in my name. I had made my mind up. I would navigate through Christmas for the sake of the family. Maintaining the facade is sometimes necessary for operational stability, but in January, I would execute an exit strategy. I needed to do it calmly, fairly, and without emotional outbursts that could be used against me later. The pan began to smoke. I laid the steak down. The sear was loud, aggressive, drowning out the silence from the other room. I focused on the cooking times. 3 minutes aside. Rest for 5. Details. Logistics. Reality. That's all there is. I stood over the stove, watching the protein contract under the heat. The kitchen is a place of order. Inputs and outputs. Heat plus time equals dinner. Relationships are messy, but they still follow laws. If the structural integrity is compromised, the load-bearing walls will eventually buckle. 10 minutes later, the steak was resting on the cutting board. I sliced it against the grain. Perfect medium rare. I plated 2 servings. I added the roasted asparagus I'd prepped earlier in the week. I carried the plates to the dining table. I set one at my spot and one at hers. I didn't call out to her. I sat down and picked up my fork. Tess walked in a moment later. She looked at the plate, then at me. She sat down. She didn't say a word. She picked up her fork. We ate in silence. The only sound was silverware clinking against china. It wasn't a comfortable silence, but it wasn't volatile either. It was the silence of a contract being rewritten. She ate the food. She didn't complain. By eating, she was signaling a truce, but not a surrender. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't acknowledged the boundary I set. She was waiting for me to break the tension, to make a joke, to normalize the evening. I didn't. I ate my steak. I drank my water. I finished, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and stood up. "Thank you for dinner," she said quietly. It was a probe, a test to see if I was still hard. "You're welcome," I said. Flat. Professional. I cleared my plate and put in the dishwasher. I'm going to check some emails in the office. I didn't wait for a response. I walked down the hall to my study and closed the door. I sat at my desk and woke up my monitors. The glow of the screens was familiar, comforting. I didn't open my work email. I opened a blank spreadsheet. I started listing assets. Primary residence. Market value approximate $850,000. Mortgage remaining, $520,000. Retirement accounts, 401k, mine, IRA, hers. Vehicles, The Audi Q7 lease, my name. The sedan paid off, joint title. Liquid cash, joint savings, my personal checking. I wasn't doing this out of malice. I was doing it for clarity. If the partnership was dissolving, I needed to know the exposure. I needed to know what the severance package looked like. I created a column for premarital assets and another for shared liabilities. Around 9 p.m., the door opened. Tess stood there. She was wearing her pajamas now. She looked softer, less like a prosecutor, and more like the woman I married 5 years ago. This is the phase I call the reset. It's designed to erase the previous conflict without resolving it. It relies on my desire for domestic comfort to override my memory of the disrespect. I sent the email to your mom, she said. We're hosting. She waited. She expected gratitude. She expected me to say, "Oh, that's great. Thank you, honey." She expected the relief of the Christmas veto being lifted to wash away the insults she'd hurled 2 hours ago. Okay, I said. I didn't turn away from the screen. Send me the grocery list by Sunday so I can schedule the delivery. That's it? Just okay? I swiveled the chair. What do you want me to say, Tess? You made a decision based on the logistics. It's the right decision. We have the space. We have the time. It makes sense. I did it for you, she said, because I know you want to see your family. Don't, I said. I held up a hand. Don't frame this as a favor. You want to host just as much as I do. You want the social credit of hosting. You want your sister to see the house. Let's not pretend this is a charity act for my benefit. It's a mutual interest. She stared at me. She looked unsettled. The old buttons weren't working. The wiring had been cut. Are you coming to bed? She asked. In a bit. I have some planning to do. She lingered for a second, then closed the door. I turned back to the spreadsheet. I added a new tab, timeline. December 24th, host party. Objective, zero conflict. Execute flawless logistics. December 25th, family day. January 2nd, contact attorney for consultation. January 15th, secure separate living arrangements. I looked at the dates. It was cold, yes, but the alternative was living in a house where my character was up for debate every time I forgot to pick up a shirt. That is a toxic work environment. I wouldn't tolerate it in my department, and I wouldn't tolerate it in my home. I saved the file as project_genus.xlsx and stored it in an encrypted folder. The next morning, Saturday, the atmosphere was brittle. I was up at 6 a.m. Body clock. I made coffee, drank it black, and went for a 5-mile run. Physical maintenance is non-negotiable, especially during stress. When I got back, Tess was in the kitchen making toast. Good run? She asked. Fine, I said. Pace was good. I went upstairs, showered, and dressed. Jeans, t-shirt. Functional. When I came back down, she was sitting at the table with a notepad. We need to talk about the menu, she said. Sure. I sat down. I was thinking we'd do the prime rib again, but my sister is doing that keto thing. So maybe we need a turkey as well. Do the prime rib, I said. If she's keto, she eats the meat and the green beans. If we try to cater to every outlier, the kitchen becomes a bottleneck. Keep the menu simple. High quality, low complexity. Tess nodded. She wrote it down. Okay, prime rib. And the wine? I'll handle the inventory. I'll do a count in the cellar today and order the delta. Okay. She looked at me. Are we okay? This was the trap of the morning after. The "are we okay" question is a request for reassurance. It asks me to validate that the conflict is over and that the status quo is restored. It puts the burden of stabilization on me. We're planning Christmas, I said. The logistics are moving forward. That's not what I asked. I know. I looked her in the eye. Tess, I told you last night. I don't like how you spoke to me. I don't like the manipulation. We are moving forward with the party, but don't think that the conversation is erased just because we're picking out meat cuts. I'm still processing it. She looked away. She didn't like that answer. She wanted the I love you, I'm sorry eraser. She wanted the dopamine hit of reconciliation. I wasn't giving it. I was giving her reality. I'm going to Home Depot, I said. I need to get the lights for the exterior. If we're hosting, the exterior needs to be up to code. Okay, she said. Her voice was small. I grabbed my keys. As I walked to the truck, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For years, I had been walking on eggshells, trying to avoid the gala incident or whatever other historic grievance she pulled from the archive. I had been managing her emotions instead of managing my life. Now, I was just managing the logistics. I drove to the hardware store. I bought the lights. I bought the extension cords. I bought a new timer. As I stood in the checkout line, I looked at the card. Tools, supplies, things I could control, things that worked when you plugged them in. The clerk scanned the items. Big project. Christmas, I said. Just getting the house ready. Good luck, he said. Stressful time of year. It's just a series of tasks, I said. You execute them one by one, and then it's over. I paid with my personal card, not the joint one. Just a habit I was starting to form. I drove home. I spent the afternoon on the roof, clipping lights to the gutters. It was cold, the wind biting at my knuckles, but I didn't mind. I was efficient. Every bulb was checked. Every line was straight. Tess came out around 2 p.m. She stood on the lawn, arms crossed. It looks good, she called up. It's straight, I said. Symmetry is key. I'm sorry, she said. I paused, holding a clip in my hand. I looked down at her. About what? I asked. I needed her to say it. About the dry cleaning and bringing up the dinner. I was just stressed. Stress isn't an excuse for disrespect, I said. But I hear you. I went back to the lights. It was an apology, yes, but it was a tactical apology. It was the minimum viable product required to lower the tension in the house, so she could enjoy the holiday. It didn't address the underlying architecture of the problem. It didn't fix the foundation. It was a patch, not a repair. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a study in compartmentalization. In the office, I was putting out fires with a Newark distribution center, rerouting shipments through Philadelphia. At home, I was executing the Project Janus timeline, though Tess didn't know it. I started securing the perimeter. I went to the bank on a Tuesday lunch break. I rented a safety deposit box in my name only. I moved the essential documents, my passport, my birth certificate, the deed to the rental property I owned before the marriage. I wasn't hiding assets. I was securing my personal administration. On December 12th, we had a dinner at her parents' house. This was a stress test. Her mother is critical. Her father is passive. Tess usually relies on me to be the buffer, to charm the mother and talk sports with the father. We sat at the long oak table. The conversation turned to home improvements. Tess tells me you're doing the lights yourself this year, her mother said. Usually you hire that service. The service was booked, Tess said quickly. Isaac offered to do it. He did a great job. Well, let's hope the wiring is better than that time you tried to fix the disposal, her mother laughed. Tess laughed. I didn't laugh. I took a sip of water. In the past, I would have made a self-deprecating joke to ease the tension. Yeah, better keep me away from the plumbing. It's the role I played, the well-meaning but slightly clumsy husband. The wiring is up to code, I said. I used commercial-grade outdoor lines. The table went quiet. I didn't smile. I wasn't being rude. I just wasn't participating in the Isaac is the punchline dynamic anymore. Tess touched my arm. He's very thorough, she said, pivoting. I looked at her hand on my arm. It felt heavy. It was a prop. She was using me to demonstrate to her parents that she had a functional marriage. I was part of the set dressing. On the drive home, she was quiet. You were quiet tonight, she said eventually. I was tired. You barely spoke to my dad. We talked about the Eagles. There isn't much more to say. Are you still punishing me? I kept my eyes on the road. I'm not punishing you, Tess. I'm just not performing. There's a difference. I don't know what that means. It means I'm tired of the dance. I'm just living my life. She didn't answer. She turned up the radio. Christmas music. The final week approached. The logistics tightened. I confirmed the butcher order. I scheduled the cleaners for the 23rd. I verified the guest list count. We were at 22 people. I noticed Tess was spending money. A new dress. New table runners. Expensive candles. In previous years, this would have annoyed me, the budget creep. Now I just noted it. It was relevant data for the separation agreement. Every dollar she spent now was 50 cents less I'd have to fight for later. It was depreciation. Christmas Eve arrived. The house was ready. The smell of roasting rosemary and garlic filled the ground floor. The tree was lit. The playlist was cued. I was in the kitchen, carving the beef. This is my station. A sharp knife, a hot roast, precision work. Guests started arriving at 5 p.m. I went into host mode. This is a professional setting. You take coats, you offer drinks, you make small talk. Isaac, place looks incredible. My brother-in-law, Dave. Good guy. Simple. Thanks, Dave. Scotch. Please. Single malt. Only the good stuff. I poured him a glass. Must be nice to have this all done, Dave said, leaning against the counter. Tess was saying she was worried about you getting it all together with work being so crazy. I paused. The bottle hovered over the glass. She said that. Oh, just that you were swamped. She was worried you'd burn out. I'm fine, Dave. Capacity is high. I handed him the drink. So, she was planning the narrative. Isaac is stressed. Isaac is swamped. If I seemed distant, it was work stress. If I left in January, it would be a breakdown from the pressure. She was pre-managing her reputation. Smart. I respected the strategy. The party hit its peak around 8 p.m. The noise level was high. Laughter, clinking glass. I moved through the room like a ghost. I checked levels. I refilled ice buckets. I cleared empty plates. I saw Tess in the center of the living room. She was holding court. She looked beautiful. I can acknowledge that objectively. She was wearing the new green dress. She was telling the story about the dry cleaning, but she had retconned it. So there I am, she was saying to her cousin, and I realized neither of us picked up the cleaning. Complete panic. But Isaac, bless him, he was at the shop at 7 a.m. on Monday, banging on the door. People laughed. What guy, someone said. I stood by the doorway. She had rewritten the history to make it a mutual mistake, a quirky us moment, rather than the ultimatum it actually was. She had sanitized the conflict for public consumption. I felt a profound sense of detachment. It wasn't anger. It was the feeling you get when you sell a car. You clean it out, you hand over the keys, and you watch it drive away. It's not your car anymore. You don't worry about the oil change. I walked into the kitchen. My mother was there, stacking the dishwasher. Isaac, sit down, she said. I'll do this. I got it, Ma. You go sit. You work too hard, she said. She touched my face. You look tired. Just the quarter-end rush, I said. It settles down in January. Tess seems happy, she said. She loves hosting. You two make a good team. I looked at the dishwasher. I pressed the heavy wash cycle. We get the job done, I said. The night wound down. The guests left in waves. The final goodbyes at the door. The cold air rushing in. Merry Christmas. Thank you. Drive safe. See you soon. Then silence. The house was a wreck. Wrapping paper, half-empty glasses, plates with crumbs. We did it, Tess said. She kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the sofa. That was perfect. It went well, I said. Good execution. I love you, she said. She looked at me, eyes half closed, tired and happy. She was drunk on the success of the evening. She thought she had won. She thought the gala strategy had worked, that by threatening the thing I valued, family stability, she had forced me back in a line. I'm going to take the trash out, I said. I gathered the large black bags. I walked out into the cold night air. The Christmas lights were still on, outlining the house in perfect, symmetrical white lines. The facade was flawless. From a street, we looked like the ideal family. The lights I had installed, the home I paid for. I walked to the curb and dropped the heavy bags into the bin. The lid slammed shut. I looked back at the house. I calculated the equity again in my head. I thought about the conversation I would have with the lawyer on January 2nd. Objective: dissolution of partnership. Strategy: no fault, split assets 50/50ths, clean break. Leverage: I don't care anymore. The person who cares the least holds the most power in a negotiation. Tess cared about the image. She cared about the narrative. I only cared about the exit. I breathed in the cold air. It filled my lungs sharp and clean. I had survived the trap. I had navigated the logistics. I had kept my dignity. I walked back up the driveway. The gravel crunched under my boots. I checked the timeline in my head. Phase 1, Christmas. Complete. Phase 2, the exit. Initiating in 9 days. Efficient. Grounded. Done.
Thanks for listening.